Welcome back to my jQuery crash course lesson number 6, and in today's video I'm going to be going over HTML get and set, and this is a quick example. So when I click the button, then we're going to see that we get this alert. Now we can also see that we're changing the color of the H1, and all this is happening over here. So if we take a look here, we can see that the href changed to google.com from youtube.com, and then we've added a class of ret to the H1. And that's just a very small example of what we're going to do in this video. And before we actually get started, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss any new important jQuery videos, so that you don't stay behind. And make sure that you hit me up on Discord or Instagram if you want me to one-on-one tutor you in web development. The first thing that we're going to learn how to do is how to get the text of an element. So I'm going to make a paragraph and I'm going to write hello there. And then I'm going to make a button, which I'm going to add an event listener to. And when we click it, we're going to get the text from the paragraph, like I said before. And the reason that it's so big is because I zoomed in, because I don't want to style it and I want it to be bigger. So now let's go to our JavaScript file and let's select the button so that we can add an event listener. So dot click, and then we're going to run a callback function. And so what we're going to do is we're going to log the text from the paragraph. So the first thing that we need to do is actually select it. So we're going to write P. So here we're selecting the only paragraph that we have. And then I'm going to write dot text. And we need round brackets because it's actually a function. So now when I save this and we inspect the page, go to the console and click this, then we can see that the text from the paragraph. And what we can also do is get the text from the button if we wanted to. So change this to button. And so now we're going to get the text from the paragraph and then from the button. Now we're going to move on to the HTML method. So let's just delete the button because we don't really need it, and change this to HTML. Now if we click the button, then we're going to get hello there again, and there's actually a reason for that. So if we change the selector here to selecting the body instead of the paragraph and click it, now we're going to get the HTML of the body, but for some reason it doesn't work on the paragraph. Now, the reason that it doesn't work is because we don't have anything or any HTML elements inside of the paragraph other than the text. And this is what I mean. So let's make the text bold. So we're going to use the bold tag. We're going to write hello there. And now we can see that our text is going to be bold. And if we click the button, then now we're going to see the bold tag inside of the paragraph. So what it does is it basically logs the HTML of the paragraph, or the elements that are going to be inside of the paragraph. So this would better work with a div. So if I made a div here, and then let's just remove this part, and we selected the div and we got the HTML, then we would get the paragraph, as you can see right here. Now we're going to move on to another method, which is going to be the val method. And for this one, we need to make an input, and I'm going to show you something before we get the value from it. So the way that inputs work is when we write something like hello, then we can see that there's nothing really here. So I'm going to actually go to the button here. We can see that we can write text inside of the element here, and that's what we see here. But for inputs, we don't have a closing tag where we can write text. So what they use is an attribute called a value. And if I write something like starting text here and save it, then now we're going to see that the default text in the input is going to be what we wrote in the value. So this method is mostly used for inputs. So if we selected our input now and then we got the value, and val stands for value, just a shorter way to write it. So now if we click it, then we're going to get nothing because there's no text in the input. And if I write input text and then click it, then we're going to get what we wrote in the input. Now we're going to move on to setting values by actually combining getting values. So we're going to make a paragraph, and then I'm going to write input value. And what we're going to do is when we click the button, we're going to get the value of the input and then write it over here. So let's go back here, and then let's turn the value of the input into a variable. So I'm just going to write input val. That's going to be set to the value of the input. Now we're going to select the paragraph and we're going to use the text method. So if we write this, then we're basically setting the text to something. Now we're going to set it to this. So input value plus the actual input value. And so now if I write something like test and click on the button, then now we're going to see it work. And the reason I wrote this part is because if we just wrote the input value, then what it's going to do is it's going to change the text to just the value. Now, because we can set the text method, we can also set the HTML method for our paragraph. So it works the same way, but we just have more options. So if I write something in our input and click on the button, then we can see that we have the same outcome. But if we wanted to, we can put the input value inside of an element. So I'm gonna make a bold tag or put it in a bold tag. Now if I write bold text and then I click the button, then we can see that the text is going to be bold because in the paragraph we've created a bold tag and then that's where the input value is. So we can also create elements in our HTML file or in our body here if you wanted to. So if we did something like body and then basically just do the same thing, then we're going to see that all of the elements that we had before disappear because we're basically just changing the HTML of our body to this. So if we wanted to add an element, what we could do is add a div, and then in that div, that's where we're going to set that's where we're going to add the elements. So let's add a div, and then we can do something like, let's just create an h1, and then we can write heading 1 just to see if it works. So if I click the button, then we can see that we've created an h1 inside of a div. And the next method was value. And there isn't really much useful things that we can do with it other than things like this. So we actually gonna make an if statement and we're gonna do if input value dot length is not bigger than 0. So if the input value dot length is not bigger than 0, that means that there's nothing there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set the value of the input to this. So we're going to set it to input value is empty. And then else, we're just going to set the text to what it was. So actually select the paragraph, and then here it was text, or we can do HTML. We can do input value is not empty. So if it's empty and I click the button, then we're gonna set the value of the input to input value is empty. But then now that it's not empty and we'll click the button, then now we can see that the text is going to be set to input value is not empty. And now we're going to move on to my favorite method, which is going to be attribute. So let's just make an h1. I'm going to write heading. And what we're going to do is actually, oh yeah, we can go to our CSS file, and as you can see, I've added a class of red, which changes the color to red. And we can delete all of this code. And now what we're going to do is by using the attribute method, we're going to set the class to red just to get to know this method. So we're going to select the h1. And then to use this method attribute, we're just going to write attr, which is short for that. So we're going to set class to red, which is going to change the color of the h1 to red. Now we can see here that when I click the button, then a class of red gets added, and we can change this to even ID. So we can set this to ID. We can even make up classes, so we can do title, and then we can do 1. So we can see that I made a new attribute and so on. But we can also get them. So let's make an href, or not an href. Let's make an anchor tag, and the href, I'm just going to set this to www.youtube.com. And so now what we can do is log that. So let's actually alert it, and it's going to be anchor tag dot attribute, and then the attribute name is href. So now when we actually, let's add some text here also. So link. And so now when we click the button, then we're going to get the href of the link here. And we can obviously also change this. So we can change it first and then alert it. So let's copy this, paste it here, and then we're going to set the href. We're going to set it to equal to www.google.com. And so now when we click it, then we can see that we've changed it. And also, if we take a look here, it's YouTube, but now it's going to change to Google. And so this is going to be for this video. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, then leave a like. Sub to this channel for more content like this. Leave a comment down below if you have any video requests, questions, or if you want me to tutor you on web development. And hopefully, see you in the next video.